Rev up your engines!
Well, I laugh at General Motors and their prediction they're going to be all electric in the future. They make one car, the Bolt, which is a massive failure. They had to recall them all. They're not building anymore now because they got to fix all the ones that they built because the batteries start on fire. It's going to cost them $2 billion. Yet they're promising us all they're going to go electrified in the future. Come on. GM is a history of failed electric cars. What makes people think all of a sudden magically they're going to make these great electric cars? It's a failed company. Anyone can see that. They make crappy cars that fall apart. They have for decades now. And now all of a sudden magically they're going to make good electric cars when the one they make isn't that good and they got problems with them. And of course their main problem is they're stuck with the Bolt because that's all they have. They got nothing else. They have scheduled things like the electric Hummer and stuff. Yeah, $100-something thousand truck. How many of those are people actually going to buy? It just amazes me the nonsense that spouts out of these executives because the wind's blowing for, oh, we got to be green. Oh, we're all going to do this. Yeah. Stuff we make now is crap, but I mean, no, hey. The falsifications of electrification that are stuck out there, the one that they're making in Michigan, the first all-electric truck to be sold on the market, the Rivian, well, they just did a study on them, found out that they don't have heat pumps in them, all right? Heat pump makes them more efficient when it's cold outside. They don't have heat pumps in them. These things are going to be really inefficient in the cold weather. Pickup truck that's inefficient in the cold weather. Sounds like a brilliant idea, right? They hide everything to try to make it look like, oh, the Tesla will go this far. Well, no, they don't. You start towing things, their range goes way down. In that case, no heat pump. They're going to use even more electricity when it's cold outside. They hide all this stuff just so they can get them out. Rivian had get it out. We're the first ones out, and then their stock goes up, you know? Nobody looks at the long run in terms of, are these things even viable? And GM obviously is not a viable electric car making company. Look at the crap that they put out so far. Now, the Bolt does have a cheap starting price. Well, cheap for electric cars, $31,000. But obviously, they got all kinds of problems. I mean, anybody could have told you that. What has GM had for decades? Problems with electrical systems. Those ignition switches they had problems with. When anybody would think they're not going to have problems with electric cars, they're insane. They're just jumping on a bandwagon with everybody else. And of course now with companies like Volkswagen getting seriously involved in electrical cars, as far as I'm concerned, they would blow General Motors away. They're going to be building down a road in Chattanooga, Tennessee here, probably annihilate anything GM would make. The Germans are more into electrification. They've already got all this hydrogen fuel cell stuff going on in Germany. So, you know, they're racing forwards. And strangely enough, a bunch of the electrification that they're doing with cars is done by Opel in Germany. GM owned for a long time. I believe it was 2017 or something that they sold them away and they don't own them anymore. The company that did do is starting to do electric cars, Opel. Well, GM sold them off. You know, I mean, it's like you couldn't make a bigger comedy of errors than GM if you tried. If you made a movie out of it, people would say, well, this is just pure fantasy. Who would believe this stuff? Well, anybody who believes that GM's going to make good electric cars, welcome to La La Land. You're living in the land of fantasy and unicorns. Because in the real world, they make crappy electric cars, and they can't even make them now because they got to fix all the ones that they built because they all broke and started on fire. I mean, that says it right there. Their executives talk the talk, but the bottom line, where the rubber meets the road, their vehicles aren't that good. And if they think they're going to make everything electric, oh boy, people are going to be stranded all over the place with their broken down GM electric cars, if it ever comes to that. Well, if you've been following the Rivian, the first company in the United States to make actual electric pickups that people can buy, even though there's a tiny amount of them that they're actually building, people have been studying them and they found out a big glitch in them. They don't have heat pumps. Heat pumps make electric vehicles more efficient in cold weather and make heat for you inside the vehicle. So all the range BS that these people are giving with the Rivian, they'll go this far, blah, 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 obviously is not going to be true in cold weather. Because if you don't have a heat pump, they're less efficient, they can use more electricity, they have lower range, and you're a human being. You want to stay warm. Say you're in Detroit, Minneapolis, whatever, Alaska. You got to heat yourself out or you're going to die. Doesn't have a heat pump. It's going to be using more of that electricity, the battery, to keep you warm. They always try hiding the stuff from people like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. Look. Then you find the real range of these things is nothing compared to what they claim they are. It's like gas mileage. They'll claim your car gets this gas mileage. You don't even get close to what it says because it's just a make-believe thing that either the manufacturers tell or that are tested in Michigan, interesting enough, they make Rivians, where there's a handful of guys that test a handful of the cars that are actually made on dynamometers, not in the real world, on dynamometers. Even that's fake. These range of these electric vehicles, not what they're claiming them to be, and in this case, they don't even have heat pumps in them. They obviously rush these Rivians out to be the first out to make them, and hide all the truth until somebody buys one. If I were you, I wouldn't go out and buy one. Then you find out, gee, the range stinks, cold weather doesn't last long, I'm freezing to death in this thing. Don't be a guinea pig for the car manufacturers. That's all I gotta say. They're not cheap, and who knows how they're gonna last. And they're obviously making them cheaper because they don't have heat pumps. I mean, hey, all the Teslas have heat pumps, and at least they designed the things correctly for electric vehicles. These things, it's like they cobble them together as fast as they could. Let's get them out the door. D-Visitation says, Scotty, my wife wants an SUV. She's got a 2012 Mazda 3, purchased new. It runs perfect, but she wants an SUV. I want to buy something used. What would you recommend? Well, the problem is everybody and their sister wants an SUV. So the prices are skyrocketed. You're going to pay a ton for an SUV. You can't beat the Toyotas. They make the best. Honda makes the second best. You're going to pay through the nose. That's just the way that goes. But if you want something that's going to last, look at the Toyotas. See if you can find one. They're going for astronomical prices. I see 4-year-old Toyota Highlanders that are going more than they did when they were brand new with 80, 90,000 miles on them. The prices of that stuff has gone absolutely insane. But if you want something that lasts, get a Toyota, and at least it'll last, and you want to buy another one for quite some time. But you're going to find everybody wants an SUV. You're going to pay through the nose. Plus, here's something. She's driving a Mazda 3, a little sedan that gets phenomenal gas mileage. You go to an SUV and upgrade, your gas mileage is going to be crap. She might end up getting 15, 20 miles a gallon less in that SUV than she gets in a Mazda 3. Talk about that to her. Say, hey, and the insurance is going to be more. They generally have bigger engines. The bigger the engine, the higher insurance because they can go faster and do more damage. So try to talk her out of it, but if you can't, try to find a Toyota at a good price. I got customers now that are buying new ones because they say they want as much as for a used one as a new one. I might as well buy a new one. Dilo says, my gearbox light keeps coming back on. I got a Suzuki, and the gearbox light came on. I took it to a garage that replaced the gearbox with a reconditioned unit. Drove it about 20,000 kilometers. Then the light came back on. So they cleaned the valve body and changed it with another valve body. The light came back on 30 kilometers later. There's no issues. It runs okay. But I don't understand what it is. They also said something about the gearbox control unit being faulty. But they didn't replace it. It seemed fine. You're dealing with clowns. They say it was reconditioned. Who knows what that means? Then they're getting used parts and sticking them in and gasoline saying, well, maybe it's the computer module. You got to find a better mechanic. Those guys are clowns. They don't know what they're doing. This is the problem with automatic transmissions these days. When that light comes on, it means there's a problem in the system. It could be in the wiring, could be in a sensor, could be in a valve body, could be in the actual unit itself, could be in the wiring, or it could be the transmission control module. It takes a pro to figure that out. And even then, today, these transmissions are getting so complex. Generally, when they go out, you're better off throwing a car away and getting another car. I mean, these guys are gambling with used parts. Who knows if any? And then they say, well, it seemed okay after we did this. It doesn't work that way. They have to be tested out. They got to have bidirectional controls. They got to understand how this stuff works. And obviously, those guys do not. Plus, it's a Suzuki. They got crappy automatic transmissions in them anyways. You're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there. Try to find a transmission expert who really knows those things. You might not be able to find one because a lot of guys don't touch them anymore, especially Suzukis. They're seen as throwaway cars. When they break, you throw them away. You don't keep fixing them because there's too much crap that goes wrong and nobody knows how to work on their automatic transmissions. There's very little information available for people to work on them. Parts are hard to get. And then when you got a problem like that, there could be a computer, could be wiring, could be anything. They put in a reconditioned tranny. Who knows? It's probably just something from a junkyard that they put in and said it was reconditioned. I've seen people say, oh, it's a reconditioned transmission. It didn't work right. They'd bring it to me. And I'd drop the bottom and I'd say, look, it's full of sludge. This transmission is just a junkyard transmission that they washed up and painted black. I said, it's still got gooey, crappy fluid in it, which means it's not reconditioned. They didn't do anything to it. And that's probably what happened to you. That's why a lot of times when the tranny goes, give up the ghost, get another car. Don't waste your money on it because nobody can fix half of that stuff these days, especially on a Suzuki. Go ahead, says Scotty, 2013 Renault. After I clean the throttle body, removing the intake manifold to clean the oil that leaked, I start the car, goes up to 2,000 RPM, then drops down. After driving a couple of weeks, it still doesn't. Okay, well, you took the intake manifold off. You have to put a new gasket on it. Now, a lot of times guys say, that looks good enough, I'll put it back on. You probably have a massive vacuum leak somewhere. When you have a big vacuum leak, the engine's sucking air. So the car will idle really high because it's sucking too much air. Now, once you get going down the road, your car's sucking in so much air, it doesn't affect it that much when you're going on highway 60, 70 miles an hour. But at idle, it'll make it up. So look for vacuum leaks. Now, you might have to take it all apart and buy a new intake manifold gasket, but you never know. There's so many hoses and lines. There's the brake booster line that comes off. Maybe that's loose. Just look all around. You could probably hear some air being sucked. Now, if it's not that, then you would have bent something like the throttle plate. Or the cable might be bent, and then it'll be sticking. It'll idle a lot higher. So check that. Odds are it's a vacuum leak, though. You did all that work taking off the intake. Something's probably sucking air from a gasket being pinched or leaking, or a big old vacuum hose got cracked and fell off, or it's all broken. You can hear the air sucking when it's idling. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.